talk about renders, shall we? First things first. I'm going to clean up my space a little bit here, and I've got a couple windows that I don't need, so I'm just going to clean that up. Alrighty, so some reminders. We have been, I'm just going to clear that out so we're just looking at a rendered. We've so far stuck pretty closely to either the material preview, which is this one here, and as a reminder, you can change your lighting environments. One thing I would add to that is you can change the world opacity, so like now the world shows up, and the blur of that world, have it come into focus, and the strength of the lights in that world. Next, you can change the rotations between the blur down, strength up, and I'm just going to change the rotation. So that is one of the ways that you can get light into an environment. But one thing you might notice here is that now that this light is on, no other lights are on. So that's kind of problematic. You can turn that on by adding scene lights, but the strength of the world will change how those lights function. So when you're actually learning how lights work and wanting to mess with rendering from this isn't the best. It's better to render from actual viewport shading mode of some sort. And so the viewport render that we're in right now is Eevee. And so I think I messed that up, but it stands for Extra Easy Virtual Environment Engine. And that's what that acronym stands for. But I think a couple videos back, I couldn't remember on the spot what it was called, but now I got it. So I want to render an Eevee, and I want to talk about what that means. And if I just hit render right now, if I go up here to the render menu, and I hit render image, Eevee will calculate exactly what it sees and render an image. And then if I want to save this image, I go image and save as. And then it'll give me the prompt. You can change your file format here. So PNGs support transparency if you've got that turned on. JPEGs. Typically it wants to give you not a full quality image. I used to be one of those people who would drop down the compression and make it 0, but I don't know, so very often it doesn't matter, so I just leave it at whatever the defaults are. But again, you have where you want to put it, what do you want to call it, and save the image as, and it'll show up. So that's rendering. Like in a nutshell, you frame something, you render it. But there's obviously more. One of the things that we're looking at here with Eevee is that this is a digitized render environment. So it's mathematically calculating what this would look like, but it's doing it in such a way that's not necessarily accurate. And that's one of the big differences between Eevee and Cycles. So if I switch over here from Eevee to Cycles, I have to go to the render panel. There it is, the render panel. And then render engine, I have Eevee, which is where we were. And then I have Cycles. We'll talk about Workbench today, but I'm switching over to Cycles, and now notice right away that it's taking a little bit longer, and you've got these little things. These little lights are called fireflies. I'm going to zoom in so you can see them. And basically what's happening is the render display for my viewport is set pretty low, and as it's calculating how the light leaves this emissive object and bounces off of the ground and then bounces into my camera, it's doing something called ray tracing. And so it's literally understanding which direction and angle that a quote-unquote virtual photon is leaving an object, hitting a surface. It is learning how to refract off of that surface. So for this is kind of partially rough, and so the light kind of gets trapped in here, and that's why it looks rough like this. And then it bounces off that surface and hits the camera. And so not every single light's going to do that. So it's really trying to optimize for the lights that are hitting in here. Now this is a viewport render. If I move over to my render settings, I see that the viewport render is set here. I'll talk about this a little bit. And then in actual render, if you notice the noise threshold, this is 0.1, which is significantly bigger than 0.01. And we don't necessarily need to go into all the details of how this works, but there's also a samples thing. So if I do the noise samples of my viewport, I'm only doing 1,000 different bounces and calculating what 1,000 bounces looks like. But when I render it, I'm calculating 4 times that. And I'm making sure that the noise threshold is much, much smaller. So let's look at what it looks like now. So this is when I just move it, you'll see that it's sampling. And this is doing an active viewport render. It's doing the calculations with 0.1. And it might be a different number for you, by the way. But every single time you move it, you are having to recalculate, which is one of the drawbacks of cycles, is that it is pretty heavy on your computer. Now, I've sped it up by turning this from 0.01 to 0.1. But let's go ahead and see the same exact image. I want you to notice the fireflies when I go to render it. This might take some time. In the video, I will fast forward this. Shouldn't take too much time, but you can kind of see what it's calculating here. It says that it's going to take like 33 minutes. I don't know if it will take 33 minutes, but let's watch it for just a moment, and then I might kind of skip away while it's rendering in the background. I don't have like a super powerful computer, but I do have a powerful enough computer that I can have something rendering while I'm editing like the file. So we'll come back to this. We're at 88, and it's taken about 45 seconds so far. Okay, cool. While we're waiting for that cycles render to happen, I don't want to make any changes at all to the environment, just because I would have to then re-render it, and we want to do a compare-contrast thing. But what I will do is I'll introduce the other option for the render engine. We'll look at Workbench. So we'll go to Workbench, and I'm going to turn off my camera, and you're going to notice that it looks really similar to the solid mode. In fact, the solid mode is a type of Workbench, but there's some new options that are happening over here. So the first thing to know about Workbench is it's there to help you model, and it helps you model by giving you different surface qualities and different quick lighting setups. And so first things first, when I click on this, I see these different lighting setups. This is kind of fun because it gives you a cool and a warm lighting setup. And just as I move my camera around, this isn't my render camera, this is just my viewport camera. You can see I've got like a red side and a blue side. And so I'm adjusting the studio lighting. I can get like an actual studio lighting environment. And I've got like a little bit cooler of an environment here. Cool. So there's that. I'm going to keep it here for now and just show you some of these options. So we've got a material option, which if this had materials on it, we would see the materials, but I think that it's just giving me this. I have a couple other ones that I use quite a bit. There's the random one. Now what I like about random is that it quickly differentiates my objects so I can see just what I'm trying to click on. I use this quite a bit, but you can also have like a single color. Oh wait, where is it? Object. So I'll keep random on and just kind of look at it with different material caps or with different studio lightings. Cool. So the next thing I want to explore while we're waiting for that render to go is material caps. And so these are literal material captures that are then applied to the entire surface. So if I go here to material cap, don't see much has changed, but when I click on this, I've got more options. And so let's look at these. Whenever we're doing solid, we see that there's just like a basic. There's another kind of basic clay. I need to turn random off and go to material. And so this is just like a brown clay. Some people really like that. We have different kinds of materials for different kinds of needs. But I'll show you my favorites. My all-time favorite that I use when I'm doing high-end hard surface modeling is this one right here. It's this material, or what is it called? Metal, it says it right here, metal Carpaint. Now what I like about this is I can see the exact quality of the surface by looking at this kind of octagon light. And so if I've got any kind of pinched qualities or something that's not working right, I can just kind of drag that light over the surface and it looks good. If you're not sure what I mean, I'm just going to go in and edit this for a second. I'm going to go to my vertex and I'm going to just cut using my knife tool. We haven't really covered this, but now I'm going to tap. And when I drag that over that weird surface, notice the surface quality imperfections that happen from that weird knife cut that I just made. See how that light changes? So when you're doing like really fine, high-end hard surface modeling, you don't want any of that. It should just look like a clean and perfectly smooth surface. So this helps you find those imperfections and fix them. We are not going to fix it today. But I like that one. This is a really good way to explain normals to people. But I'm not going to do that now because I don't need to dump too much information in. This is a cool Toon shader. And so it's just like pre-built for you, which I like quite a bit. I'm going to come back to this and explore a little bit more of the options down here. And so one of the first ones is creating a cavity. And I'm just going to kind of zoom in on this. You see right away that when I have that cavity on and off, I see the actual materials a little bit better. So I'm going to turn outline on. Oh, no, not outline. What is it? Yeah, we'll leave it this way. I want to see my actual like lines here. See if I can do it up here. Wireframe, there it is. That's what I wanted. So with my wireframe on, this helps you see the kind of ridges and valleys a little bit better. So I don't have my wireframe on. I'm going to turn that off. There it is, right there. So cavity on and off. As you're modeling, it becomes this thing that really helps you see where your surfaces are so that you can model better. Again, the whole point of Workbench is to help you model better. And you can turn this on and off here. And you can turn shadows on and off. If there was shadows in this light environment, things like that. You have X-ray mode, and you can play with the depth of your X-ray to see through it. I don't know. There's some cool things that are going on here. So yeah, that is all under Workbench. I'm going to go to my camera real fast, and I'm going to render this Workbench. Render that image, and it should render right away. Oh, I hope I didn't blow out my other render. I think I might have. Let's see. It also might be still rendering the other one. Yeah, so it's still rendering. We're at 7 minutes and looking pretty good. Notice that if I zoom in on these, I still see some noise, right? The fireflies are still there, but they're much smaller. So, and as it continues to render, that should go all the way. And as we get higher, it's kind of like a logarithmic thing. It'll go faster as the number gets higher, which is kind of cool. All right, sweet. So I'm gonna just minimize this. The other render should come after. It might not actually want to render because I'm in the middle of a render too. I'm actually not sure. I don't think I've ever sent 2 renders out. But yeah, this is going just fine. All right, I'm gonna stop for a little bit and let you play between cycles and take a look at your viewport versus your regular render. And if you start a render with a lot of different lights in it, it might take some time.